This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Full week of NBA is now done, over with, kaput, finito, finished. And yet, there is still so much to talk about. What an exciting week of NBA basketball. We see guys sporting rings. We see new faces in new places. We have head coaches are ready to kind of, put their teeth and grit and grind into the, to make things happen. Man, it sounds like some teams are hungry and some other teams, man, I don't know, might have us kind of taking a pause on some of our predictions that we were making in the Eastern Conference, Western Conference preview. So let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet, man, because we got a lot to get into. You know who he is, man, my brother from another mother, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC. My man, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What's good, sir? I think we should wave hi to the audiences now. They can actually put a face to the names, right?
Yeah, man, we're trying something new here for this 22-23 season, taking our talents to the YouTube atmosphere and always having the audio aspects as well, too, on your favorite podcast platforms. But we're trying
like Guru says, it's mostly the voice. It's mostly the voice.
But I think it's important because for those who've not rocked with us before, this will actually be going into year 10 of the baseline. So it's a pretty special milestone for us. Our 10-year anniversary will actually be in January. So for us now to be able to bring you our musings and conversations about the NBA with just ourselves or sometimes special guests, I think it's going to be a very, very, very special season. So stay tuned with us here, man. But our first ever video, true video edition of the Baseline here on YouTube.
Yeah, and look, I know a lot of people are like, well, why'd you guys wait? Listen, we're OGs, man. It's not that we hated the concept. But I think we, as more than anything else, we appreciated what doing audio has given us. It's given us a platform, and we wanted to find a balance to be able to still do what we do from an audio perspective. But I think, as we, move forward with the way that we get our information out, our perspective, utilizing the podcast and things of that nature, we've got to adapt and expand, man. And so I'm excited about it. I know we've said this has been kind of in the works for quite some time. And, maybe if nothing else, it took us, proverbial anniversary time frame, for us to get a little sport. We get to splurge a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? After you work hard and instead of getting that cheap gold watch, you're like, you know what? I think I'm just going to go ahead and take that trip around the world now.
And hopefully fans will take that trip around with us around the NBA on a week basis in the video format. But don't forget about our audio platform because that's the home, man. That's the bread and butter. So rock with us one way or another.
Absolutely. And as always, we got to give the plugs, for where you can hear us, not only just watch us as well, too. So as always, be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. Just put the Baseline in your search of whatever you use to listen to podcasts or even watch podcasts. And then once you see us pop up, just add us on. And then this way you'll get access to some really great NBA conversation and content. As always, if you want to catch our episode in any of the previous episodes, go to www.thebaselinenba.com. And as always, we run with the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group, you run in these content streets. So if you want to catch our show and a litany of great shows with great personalities, great topics, be sure to go to www.19mediagroup.com. So this week, the focus is obviously, going to be on us talking about what's happened with week one of the NBA. But for our segment of the breakdown, I think it's important that we highlight two very, very poignant teams that I think we've been saying for quite some time, I don't know if whether or not the writing is on the wall. I don't know if they realize that there is a window. But after seeing how these guys have performed over the first week of NBA basketball, it's safe to say that we have to start questioning how tight that window is going to be for teams like the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers. So we're going to get into why these two teams specifically may have it be a very, very hard uphill battle for them to climb than we may have anticipated leading up to the season. And I think it's going to be a great topic of conversation. I know Shaw got some things to say about that, but we definitely want to get that perspective from you as well, too. So tune in to hear what we got to say, because we're definitely going to be wanting you guys to weigh in as the same. But before we do that, let's get right into, first week impressions of what took place in the NBA from, NBA tip-off where we saw the Boston Celtics, look pretty doggone impressive. And then the Golden State Warriors, who seem to have probably put a lot of people on notice that they're probably not going to just take this one championship that they copped, and decide to go right off into the sunset. A lot to be said about all that and the teams in between, Shaw, when we talk about first week impressions of the NBA.
A lot has happened, I think, in this first week, as you alluded to. So I do another show, not to plug other stuff out here as well, but it was interesting.
No, but please, by all means.
But so I do another show, because for those who don't know about us already, we do have some Celtics fandom. So I have a show called on the Believe Network, Believe in Celtics, with Gary Washburn from the Boston Globe. And one of the things that we said about that a couple weeks ago was preseason is not what preseason used to be, because it's not as long. We're not really getting the extended looks at teams and kind of the rotations, because we're kind of in this load management era. So there's less games. Coaches are less likely to run their full rotations out there and their full complement of guys. And some teams starting lineups were very much in flux. We had no idea exactly who was starting until this first week now. And now we can really kind of understand what's really going on here. So to me, that's been one of the more interesting things to kind of find out who's starting, who's not, who coaches have some early season trust in. I'm going to take it somewhere really, really left and kind of bring it back. In our preview show, Cal, you was talking about Colin Sexton, being somebody, really to kind of watch, going to explode this year. And I think I remember, and we were talking with Jabari, our other former co-host, and talk about it. I said, well, Sexton is not even going to start. At this point in time, they're bringing Conley and Clarkson. And that has been true. Sexton, who got traded, he's not even starting. He's coming off the bench. So he's off to a slow start. But Utah has actually played well. As we record, they're 2-0 and playing New Orleans as we're doing this show right now. So to me, that's one of the biggest things that I've just learned, seeing what teams are actually doing. Spencer Dinwiddie was supposed to come off the bench. He's starting in Dallas. Christian Wood is the one who's coming off the bench. Obviously, what's going on in Philly and LA, Boston's hot start, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of rotational stuff is what I've seen. And one thing I do want to touch on really, really quickly is I think we have another very, very special rookie class. If this first week is any indication of what the rookie class is going to be and the impact they're going to have on the season, this is going to be very, very special.
Yeah, I'm not going to, you have the word special, but I'm going to use the word as entertaining, right? Like, this is in essence what I think we want to be enamored with when we look at the NBA. We want them to kind of break the status quo, or what is seemingly the trend of what we've seen over the last couple of seasons about, how we look at and determine not just the start of the NBA season, but the season, as it progresses and what it would culminate to, right? One of the things I think that really stands out to me, Shaw, and I think you highlighted it, but I think I want to expand on it a little bit more, is when you see how the teams are carefully implementing and utilizing the rotations. I think in previous years, I think most head coaches have been very settled on, we know who our starting five is going to be, and I'll just kind of figure it out as we go through the season, what 6, 7, 8, 9, if you go that deep in your rotations are. What we're already seeing from the outset, Shaw, because we've been sitting here saying to ourselves, man, we can't wait to see when Jamal Murray comes and plays. We can't wait to see when Michael Porter comes out and plays. We can't wait to see when Kawhi comes out and plays. That, or even Anthony Davis. We are seeing that, and I don't want to confuse this with load management, because this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about superstar players who are coming back from significant injury. So load management is automatically inserted in play. What I'm pertaining to is the commitment in the coaches to stay true to letting them work themselves back into NBA shape, to the competitive fervor that they have been dealing with regarding the NBA, because they've been so far removed over the last couple of seasons. I don't think at times we appreciate the idea that when they say in the NBA that this is a marathon, not a sprint, the only time frame that we ever talk about that is whenever we're talking about load management. But when we're talking about assuring the quality of play from guys who want to come in and want to execute and get their feet underneath them, unless you're a desperate team who really needs wins at the very beginning of the season, this is what I expected. I wasn't going to expect to see Kawhi Leonard coming out and play 33 minutes. I wanted to see him play 20 minutes, but feel comfortable in himself doing 20 minutes. Because you know what that does, Shaw? It doesn't allow us to see bad basketball for 5 games straight when you're easing him in those 5 games and you're able to see glimpses of what the potential to be when he's finally fully up and running and fully comfortable with himself. There's no level of stubbornness that tends to happen at times with the superstar players because they're recognizing that they cannot afford to do what's been happening with them, which is rush themselves back into play. They look awful, then they re-injure themselves, and we're right back with the same conversation. So I'm really impressed with the way that head coaches have almost in a way said, we're putting our foot down. This is not about you starting. This is not about me giving you 45, 50 plus million a year. This is about me making sure that before we say who is in and out by playoff time, it'll be that you and the rest of the team are fully healthy, fully ready to go, and ready to play the most significant games for the season, which tend to be after the trade deadline and going leading up into the final games of the regular season.
I will say the one thing about the Kawhi situation, I was a little surprised he came off the bench. But again, that's just the type of star or person in essence, I guess, that he is. The Clippers obviously have long-term goals and trying to play deep into this season, well into June.
There are only a few coaches, though. There are only a few coaches that I think Kawhi could see himself listening to if that was the call by Tyronn Lue, right? Like It had to have been a collaborative thing, and Kawhi would have had to at least have humbled himself to the idea that he's okay with doing that. You know what I'm saying? And hearing that from Tyronn Lue, I think makes it all more palatable for us to digest that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little surprising because everybody else that you mentioned, Jamal Murray, Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, Ben Simmons, even as guys were coming back from injuries, they all went back into their starting roles. If their minutes were reduced, surely, but none of them actually just came off the bench.
I mean, Klay Thompson right now, he isn't playing a full, like 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying? They're still kind of easing him in at the beginning of the season. Yeah. And how long has he been, fresh off of coming back from his ACL injury? You know what I'm saying? Coming back around December of last year, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think with other guys, Davis, I don't think there's any minutes restrictions. Simmons, they were trying to restrict a little bit. Murray has already been banged up in the preseason, so hopefully he's going to be able to stay healthy throughout the course of the year already. But it's been really interesting. I don't think Michael Porter's he's been okay. I don't think he's looked terribly. I think he had one really good game, and then everything else has been kind of in the middle. But some of those are the big names that we were expecting and excited to see back. And it's nice to just, as you alluded to, just see them back on the floor in any capacity, even if they have to kind of ramp themselves back up throughout the course of the rest of the regular season here. As I said before, too, obviously with the rookies as well. But I think there are a couple of teams that are surprising, and maybe we'll save them for some later segments. But there are some teams that are not as bad as I thought they were going to be, at least in terms of their overall effort. I know it's early on, so we don't want to read too much into what the records are. But I'm seeing a lot of great effort, especially for some teams in the West. I'll mention like Utah and Portland specifically. I've really been surprised at what I've seen with them from an effort standpoint and how well they've been able to be competitive. I don't think Minnesota's taken off quite as good as they wanted to and hasn't looked quite as cohesive, but that's to be expected because they have a lot of new parts on their team. So yeah, man, a lot we could get into, but I think it's been a great first week.
Absolutely. What were your thoughts about what you've seen so far for the New York Knicks? And I'm not using the New York Knicks in this part of the segment to say, we got to, have conversations about big market teams. But sure, there's been some general, how do you want to say, aesthetically pleasing comments being made about how the New York Knicks have started off this season, even though they're 1-1. And I believe they're playing tonight or they're playing tomorrow. But me personally, I applaud the effort, right? And I think that will go a long way. Sure. In regards to what they're doing. But do you see anything that really sticks out at you? Like everybody's saying, oh, it's like God sent that, Jalen Brunson's there. They've got their point guard of the future. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like,
yeah. We know you're a little.
My man Tyler Riley says, easy now. Ease up, man. Come on now. Let's let's not get too crazy with this.
Nah, and I understand why you're a little skeptical. I think of the Brunson is the anointed point guard, but I think some stat is that the Knicks have had 10 different point guards in the last 10 years
Yeah.
at opening night, something crazy like that. So hopefully there'll be some stability, if nothing else, to that situation. One of the things that I say for New York specifically, and without going in deep dive into that, is that I've been impressed that Thibs has played the young guys. We've seen Reddish out there. We've seen Obi Toppin out there.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's exactly what I think. And I don't know. This could be Fugazi, right? Like he might be doing it just to appease. He's like, listen, I'm going to listen to y'all, and I'm just going to go ahead and start throwing out them young guys like you want me to. And I'm sure like these guys, they're going to play hungry. They want them minutes. They want to play, right? So they're going to give you their best effort. But I'm going to tell you something. If this team starts suffering and here taking some L's, y'all don't be surprised if Tibbs decides to draw back in his bag and reliable, throw out every damn veteran he can find, pick him up off the streets. You know what I'm saying? Yoke him off of the carpool, you know what I'm saying, over there by the bridge. If he has to, he'll start playing them veterans if he sees that the young guys can't handle the moment or can't compete on a level that he expects, you know what I'm saying, this Knicks basketball team to be competing at.
Yeah, but we've seen it early on, and it's been, like I said, it's been really nice. From that's been the one thing I was a little bit unsure about. Even Hartenstein, who I think we all, well, NBA Twitter, he's kind of a NBA Twitter darling, if you will, in terms of a big man center, a guy who just kind of plays his role. He's getting like almost 30 minutes a night, I think, in the first couple of games of the season. Reddish is at 23, 24 minutes a night. Quickly is at 22 minutes. So it's been really interesting, to see that be the development here in New York. And we'll see if that actually continues. They have Quentin Grimes has been injured, so he hasn't even touched the floor yet. So that's another guy they can institute into this rotation. A lot of Knicks fans are really excited about. So from my standpoint, that's what it's been. Really just understanding that, hey, we do have to try something different here in New York. And so far, varying results. They probably should have won that first game against Memphis. They allowed the Grizzlies to kind of come back and really kind of take that from them. But then they went out there and blasted their second opponent. I can't remember who they played, but they won by a lot. So kudos to the Knicks, and hopefully things will continue to go in a positive direction for them.
Well, I think, and the other thing I think that it leads me to the next point about what's impressed me so far is teams who I have questioned whether or not they have enough offensive firepower have really impressed me with their ability to score the basketball. Like the Boston Celtics. I mean, they dropped 126. They did like, I think, they dropped 126 2 of the 3 games that they've played. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, this is the Boston Celtics, right? This no question that this team is among one of the best teams defensively. But we always said, can they score the ball consistently? Do they have enough horses to go out there and get buckets when they have to sit down Tatum, when they have to sit down Brown? And I don't know if it's more the collective effort. I don't know where the imprint is just yet with Missoula. But I have to tell you, it really impresses me to see that the Boston Celtics make it look very easy in their ability to score the basketball. Now, again, small sample size. But if you're telling me that this is what the Celtics may look like straight out the gate, this bodes well, because you're not going to, I you know me, I've been staunch about the fact that defense wins you championships, right? Staunch about that. But I just say to myself, at some point, you are going to need to score the basketball. And if you can get other guys to contribute, like the Brogdons, you know what I'm saying? Like Smart, like these guys, and they're getting easy looks and making those shots count, and you're doing it at the early outset, you're doing it on primetime television, out the gate, good lead, you know what I'm saying? Stretch yourself away from some of these other competitive teams and stuff, kind of put them on notice. I got to tell you, man, it puts a smile on my face, not just as a Celtics fan, but also with the understanding that even defensive teams, when their players need to step up and make shots, they can do that. And I like that.
I agree. And Tatum and Brown specifically have been very great offensively, efficient more than anything else, especially Tatum here. Brown tailed off a little bit in that third game against Orlando. But in general, you've seen the Celtics trying to push the basketball as well. One game where they had a lot of turnovers, but they won all their games. The first game, they only had 10 turnovers versus 76ers. So to me, that's a squad that really seems like to be focused. They have a lot to prove, I think, in some ways. They've heard the chatter that, hey, They got lucky, getting to the finals. Obviously, the stuff with Udoka, et cetera, Gallo getting injured to begin the year, Robert Williams injured to begin the year.
How about
So
Blake
it's nice to
Griffin,
see their
bro?
young guys really jumping out here and taking charge of this situation. And they have a tough schedule. Like they'll play the Bulls, they'll play the Cavs.
Yeah,
I mean, the Wizards are playing
they're
good
gonna run.
basketball
They're
right
gonna
now
run
as well,
into a
too.
lot, but it's
So
good when you can run off 3 in a row, 4 in a row. Maybe lose 1 or 2 here and there. But they're just gonna be a competitive team. I was gonna say, what about Blake Griffin, bro? I mean, turn back the clock on the hustle. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what's being said in there. But guys that are coming in there that are wearing, you know what I'm saying, the Lucky Leprechaun green, and gold, right? Those are some pretty, fly little black and gold jerseys that they were sporting with the green on it, a green trim on it. But there's something just about the attitude and the mentality that some of these, like even this mentality that I see from Blake Griffin, I did not see this when he came over with Brooklyn. Like Brooklyn definitely got some of that talent. You know what I'm saying? They didn't. I don't know what happened to why they didn't use it the way it's. But all this I'm seeing from Blake Griffin, wasn't seeing this over the last couple of years. Not because he sucked or nothing. Maybe he just didn't know where he fit in with the Brooklyn Nets. But I'll take what I'm getting from Blake all day, every day. And I can say that a lot for a lot of other veterans who are stepping in. We'll talk about the Sixers in a little bit, Shaw. But I'm just saying, like, I can definitely see where we may not have to hit the panic button on the Sixers because of guys like PJ Tucker, where we would say the same thing about other veteran guys that are in other destinations that we are like, all right, they need to probably find better places, better pasture for them to graze elsewhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, kind of looping it up, I think Boston's looked good. Milwaukee's looked good. Miami has had some interesting games here and there as well, too. I think they're 1-1 as we record, but, I think they're still going to have a lot to say within this conversation. Not writing anybody off. Cleveland already dealing with injuries. Darius Garland is out. I think he's going to miss the next 2 to 3 games as well. So there's a lot happening.
That was a gruesome.
Say that again.
That was a gruesome eye poke he suffered.
Yeah. And you get a little shy about the Cavs because they feel like they didn't reach their potential last year because they had injuries. So you don't want to see them starting off with that. Miles Turner's out in Indiana. Jalen Suggs is out in Orlando. So there are some, as much positive as we've been talking about, there are some people who are still dealing with some things here and there. And we want to see all these teams get back to full strength as soon as possible.
Real quick, Shaw, before we get into our breakdown segment, do you think after seeing the Cleveland Cavaliers, and let's just assume that Garland comes back, which he will, but let's assume that the team is fully healthy, seeing what this team showed you, do you think they take a step back defensively?
Slightly. I mean, there's a lot of trust. I think I was listening to a Cavs Spaces actually earlier today, and they talked about that. What JB had said is like, listen, yeah, they're not starting the 3 monster bigs, but Markkanen wasn't really a defensive type player. They really believe in the ability of Mobley and Jared Allen to be able to contain guys if they get past on the perimeter and be elite level stoppers on at the rim. So I think they're going to have some struggles there, though, at the point of attack. Donovan Mitchell is going to have to show some chops that we haven't necessarily seen from him before, but I think he has the physical capabilities. And he started to play very, very well to begin the season as well. So offensively, at least. So I think collectively the Cavs will probably drop out of that top 10 or wherever they were last year. But I think what we always say here on the baseline is, can they play situational defense when the game is on the line here in the last 5 minutes in the fourth quarter? Can they kind of tighten the screws and make it happen? And sometimes you can steal some wins that way.
All right. What were your thoughts about the New Orleans Pelicans? There's a lot of hype being built around what they showed us, especially against the Brooklyn Nets. I feel like, oh my God, like, what they did to the Brooklyn Nets, like, it's just, I mean, we should be very scared of the New Orleans Pelicans. And look, rightfully so. They have a really good basketball team. They've got a young basketball team. But I don't know if I'm going to go out on a limb just yet and just say, oh my God, we should be terribly frightened. You know what I'm saying? Or like the world is being completely put on notice. I would expect this team to really push the, the other teams in not just the West, just in the NBA in general, with the way that they're set up to play. I think this is where we're going to really see the validity of Willie Green's imprint on this basketball team and what it reflects. Now that we see that you have a fully healthy Zion Williamson, and when it counts the most, who is actually taking those key shots at the end of games? Is it McCollum? Is it Brandon Ingram? I think everyone is conceded that they say this is Brandon Ingram's team. You know what I'm saying? Because, he's that dude. But I don't know. Zion Williamson probably had a little bit something to say that, like, hey, you got to feed me that ball in the paint. Look at what I can do for you type of thing. I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how they balance all of this out, not just to feed the ball to their stars, but also to see what part of the spectrum really pans out when you look at the Pelicans defensively and offensively.
Pelicans are, I think, a potent offensive squad, and I think they're going to be well coached defensively. It doesn't look like we're going to get the season that Zion had his full, like the one season he was fully healthy, where he was averaging 27 and whatever it was, 7 and 5 or something like that. Because I think Ingram has grown, and one of the criticisms we had coming about New Orleans coming into the season was, would Brandon Ingram take a step back as a result of Zion being there? Because he is kind of just a more timid, not to say timid, but he's not as vocal offensively when Zion's there. He just kind of takes a back seat. But with CJ McCollum there now, also as another mouth to potentially feed, Valanciunas is on this roster now too, who is, again, it's a double threat every single night. The Pelicans have a variety of options which they can throw and score on a regular basis. So I don't necessarily think Zion's going to be a 30 or 27 to 30 point per game guy, because I think Ingram is going to be right up there with him. CJ's there now. Valanciunas is there, as I alluded to. And I think this is a team that can really do it by committee with high level talent. With all four of those guys, can get you 20-25 any single night.
All right, you're tuned to the Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, Shaw and I are going to talk about two teams that are obviously not liking the way that they started off this NBA season, but which one really should be hitting the panic button? You'll find out this and a little bit more here on the Baseline. Time to break it down. To the bone gristle. Time now for the breakdown. Callie, Warren Shaw, the Baseline NBA podcast, and our topic for the breakdown: two teams. I don't know if we were expecting them to be 0-3 at the early outset of this season. I'm sure that they probably wish that we did not have 3 games in 1 week, so we can harp on them as badly as they've looked. But I don't know what we can necessarily say about teams like the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, on the fair side, they did play some pretty good competition. So I don't know if we should lean more on the fact that it's who they played against, or we really should hone in and focus on, is it that this is going to be a long season for both of those teams? And if you had to push the panic button, which team would you push that panic button for? Shaw, I'm going to pose that question to you. When you saw how both the Philadelphia 76ers and the Los Angeles Lakers played this week, who should you be pushing that panic button for already?
So I think it's pretty easy for me to say, because most people looked at this roster coming in and said it doesn't fit. And as I said in kind of the intro on the first segment, we weren't quite sure what rosters and rotations were going to look like. And one of those things was the LA Lakers. Is Russ coming off the bench? Is Russ starting? Then they bust out a starting lineup with Russ, Pat Bev, Lonnie Walker, LeBron, and AD. I was like, where did the Lonnie Walker situation kind of come into play? Because we heard Kendrick Nunn, and we heard all kinds of names bantered about. They have an injury to Thomas Bryant to begin the year, so he'll be out, I think, for the first 2 weeks or so of the season. But the Lakers right now, they blew a game here on the day we were recording against the Portland Trailblazers. Give up 41 to Dame, but we're unable to kind of get stops at the end. The biggest thing, though, is the Lakers' three-point shooting. Shooting sub 20% right now from the three-point line, which is pretty absurd. That's like historically bad. So something's going to have to be done there, whether that's rotation-wise or this infamous trade that we continue to hear about. But to me, if I was pushing a panic button at this stage of the season, and we know what this is, it's all hyperbole. We're not really like, oh, blow everything up. But if I'm more worried about the Lakers at this stage, because I think those concerns were valid coming into the season, and they've only proven to be very, very true in the first 3 games.
Yeah, the panic button definitely needs to be pushed for the Los Angeles Lakers. It's just the reason why I say this, and I'm going to come from a different perspective, Shaw, is you're Darvin Ham, right? And this is your first year coaching, and you have one Hall of Famer, you know what I'm saying? No question. You have he's likely going to be a Hall of Famer, given the accomplishments that but he's certainly not playing, like a superstar or, like one of the top tier players that, he formerly was. And then you've got a perennial star player who looks like he is so out of place with the way that the team plays and the way that the team is constructed, which is kind of strange because it wasn't like he didn't play last year. And who I'm talking about is Anthony Davis. It's not like he didn't play last year. He got injured and then just wasn't able to play for the rest of the season, which is like the typical MO. But when you watch how Anthony Davis plays, it looks like he's even further lost than he has been even when he like before he first came in. And so I don't know what you do with that, because if you're a new head coach, you need for your players to buy into what it is that you need them to do in order for you to see whether or not you have to start making those type of adjustments. And I worry because everything is so bad all across the board. Even if your intent is to move a player here and there, I'm just trying to figure out what imprint or identity is Darvin Ham putting on this team, right? Is it more on the defensive side? Are we really seeing that? I mean, like, it gave up like 130 something to the Warriors. They gave up like tonight, like just as we were recording the show, right, to the Portland Trailblazers. I'm not seeing staunch defense being played. And you're saying, hey, once Anthony Davis comes back, that's all being anchored, right? Like he's the captain. I'm not seeing impressive defensive efforts, being led by him or even being from LeBron James. You know what I'm saying? Or Pat Bev. He's not having an imprint on this team to play better defensively. So I push the panic button on a team like the Los Angeles Lakers because of the fact that a lot of the things that you thought that they should at least stabilize or at least put, kind of hang their hat on, they can't even do that well enough. And that forces them now to start relying on the thing that they cannot do well enough, which is shoot the basketball, right? Like, if your intent is that you're wanting to be a better team, that means you have to limit the opposing team's possessions. That means you have to rebound the basketball better. You got to force turnovers. You got to do other things so that you're not being put in a position where the only remedy for you to stay in games or to win games is by you shooting the basketball at such a high rate when you know that you don't have a really good basketball team that they don't have a basketball team that shoots the basketball particularly well.
Well, I'll only challenge in the aspect, again, it's so early. But they actually have a top 5 defensive rating in the first 3 games, even with what happened in Golden State. It's the point differential that's the problem, and it's their offensive rating, which is dead last right now, especially because of the shooting. They're pretty much last in every single offensive category. So defensively, hold on. Defensively, they've actually been able to have, at least statistically, the chops in essence that Darvin Ham might be looking for. But I think that's more, again, it's more statistics than I think is eye test right now for that. I don't think they're maybe as good as maybe even the analytics say, but analytically, they are as bad offensively as the stats say, because it's been really, really rough to watch, in addition to some ill-advised decision-making by some of the players on a regular basis, and some tough moments as well, too.
Right. So you can also, use that little phrase that we say, sometimes bad offense, what I'm saying, is another team's great defense, right? You can use that. But where I want to slightly push back on your point about this team being the 5th rated defensive, with a 5th rated defensive rating. And I think we've seen this numerous times, right? You could take a team like a Golden State Warriors, who have had impressive defensive ratings over the years of their dynastic runs. But where I'm challenging that, Shaw, is that they can have one half of basketball that makes them look like they're a top 5 team with a defensive rating. And then you look at what they do in the second half, and it's almost like you got to look at the splits. They can look so good for a short period of time that in its totality, they still they maintain a good number, but it's how bad it looks because they can't sustain it for the whole game. So I would probably say, and maybe it's something that I need to go and do my homework on, because what I'm saying is that and I'll just use the first game, for example, against the Golden State Warriors. That looked like a game that didn't look like they were going to go past 110 points, right? Maybe 105. And then in the second half, they just, I don't know, man, the Olay defense was in full effect. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I mean. Like, they can look good in one half and be top 5, but it's that second half or critical stretches. And I'd be really curious to see what they've done in the 3rd and 4th quarter of games, where that defense could arguably be some of the worst defensive playing that you see from a team who prides themselves on needing to be a top 5 defensive team.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately they've got some things to figure out on both sides of the basketball. I'd say it's positive to see Anthony Davis, when he looked like a guy who can really impact the defensive side of the basketball this season. He had 6 blocks in the game against Portland, and really was a deterrent. He got into some foul trouble as well.
Mhm.
But I think for them, they want to be able to see that he's trying on that side more importantly, and that it's not just going to be the Pat Bev show on the perimeter side. Who else is going to step up defensively to help and, not always have to have AD back there erasing shots until they can kind of figure out what they're going to do with this overall rotation. I would be interested to see, like, I think we should probably do another show maybe next week or whatever, but we probably got to do the whole first one fired, first player to get traded, like, you know what I mean? Kind of like those projections, because I'd be, if there were Vegas odds right now, I'd say the Lakers are probably going to be the first team to make a move, not firing Darvin Ham, but they're going to be the first team to probably make a trade because they desperately need some shooting in here. What we've seen in these first 50 games, I think it's not going to be as bad as it's been, but I think it's more of who they are than just kind of saying, oh, it's just a little trend. No, this is going to be what it is, I think, for the regular season if they don't fix it and
I do think too, I do think too that if there's any expectation for this team to be successful, that Darvin Ham is going to have to reimagine how this team can execute offensively. I think that there's way too much. I hate to say this, but if they continue to play, like, to me, it's more of a half court oriented like type of offense where the ball moves in out. I think this ball needs to move side to side, and I think that they need to be more in transition. They have to play faster, and I don't mind if a team is going to jack up shots and they can't make shots, as long as they're making the effort to rebound and give themselves more chances to make shots. But it's just interesting to me because when I see this team, it looks like they're searching for the right shot to make because they have no confidence in the guys who are taking the shots, and that's fine. But that means that Darvin needs to come up with a better way to reimagine how the offense is going to get those easier shots. And I'll say this too. There's nothing wrong with getting 2 points. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going to the free throw line. Those are points. They have got to figure out a way to force teams to give them free baskets, like free buckets. They've definitely got to do that. All right, so let's transition ourselves and talk about the other team then. It seems like we say, well, who should we push the panic button, more desperately? Was the Los Angeles Lakers. Does that mean, though, that we don't push the panic button for a team like the Philadelphia 76ers, who they themselves have yet to get a dub, under their belt?
I'm not worried about Philly other than the fact that, I think the loss for San Antonio was concerning. let's just say that it's
that was a nice PR move.
But losing to Boston, in Boston on opening night, there's no shame in that per se. Losing to the Milwaukee Bucks, even without Chris Middleton on their home floor, I believe. No, I think it was actually in Philly. But Milwaukee's obviously a battle-tested championship level team. No harm in that per se. I think some of it is, the way they lost those games. They were in both of those games. But the San Antonio one, that's not great. That's not great. And now we hear that Embiid has been batting plantar fasciitis. So there's that aspect, already got the injury stuff going on here, and what is supposed to be.
Are you turning your head like that because that's what you feel like your pick for the MVP?
It's starting too early. Like, here we go again. I think Harden, has looked more or less like himself. But I think what you've seen when their offense has stalled is when Harden has gone back to really being himself with dribble, trying to isolate and not really letting other guys cook. Tyrese Maxey, I think, has had 2 really good games and has tried to fit in where he can here and there. But they've got to figure out their chemistry just a little bit better, where it's not just like, all right, well, we're stuck. Harden's just going to try to go into hero mode. So I think it's fixable. And again, I can excuse 2 of the first 3 losses for sure. And hopefully things will be better, as we push forward. I think by the time this comes out, they probably would have played another game by then, and we'll see where they land. But I'm not as concerned about Philadelphia, but it doesn't mean I don't have my eye on them, because hence we're talking about them here at the baseline. So It is something to at least watch.
Right. So let me
bifocals, binoculars.
Let me just the binoculars right on the Philadelphia 76ers. I wouldn't panic, but I'd be definitely concerned. The only reason why I don't think that I would panic so much, and maybe this is exactly the reason why it's great to have a coach like Doc Rivers, is We never questioned about Doc Rivers getting guys to play up the way that they need to in the regular season. He's among one of the better regular season head coaches. Where we question Doc Rivers is when he gets teams to the playoffs, right?
Sure.
Because he does not make adjustments or coach teams to play to the level that they're expected to, and then they have these great collapses. This is the reason why we say the NBA is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay. If you were non-competitive in the first 3 games that the Sixers played, there would be reason for concern, right? I mean, stabbing that panic button. But you have to feel good about the competitiveness that you're seeing. And it means that guys are bought into the idea that they don't want to look bad out there on the court, even though it's still clear that there's not an identity yet about how this team really needs to flow between Harden and Embiid. And I'm surprised that people are not really speaking to this, because you'd have thought that when the trade was made, the idea that this is being played up is we're saying there needs to be a legit point guard that needs to get Joel Embiid the basketball, because Joel Embiid is the best damn basketball player in the NBA, and he just doesn't have the kind of point guard help to elevate him to the next step. And that's when I said to you, and we had this conversation last year, Shaw, about this trade. We said, are you asking James Harden to go out there and score you the basketball? Are you asking him to be the point guard? You were relying on the fact that he was going to figure out a way to be the point guard, but come up clutch like he did when he was, a Houston Rocket. I'm not talking about playoffs when he was gassed. I'm just talking about in general. And I've been saying this, and I keep saying this, that this has been the problem that has plagued the Philadelphia 76ers. They do not have a legit point guard, and they keep forcing guys who don't play the natural point guard position to the way that it needs to be played for them to execute whatever it is that they're intending to execute. If Joel Embiid is your best player, now we find out that he's injured. So, I don't know, take this for what it's worth. At the end of the day, guys like Tyrese Maxey, guys like Tobias Harris, even PJ Tucker, who's a 3-and-D guy, they need to get the ball. You got to get the ball to them and let them shoot the basketball. Involve them. Make them feel like they're a part of this thing. If you're going to do this whole James Harden experiment thing again, you're not dealing with PJ Tucker, who is trying to find a team that he can actually be settled on, right? You're dealing with perennial star players. Tobias Harris is a former All-Star. Tyrese Maxey is one of the most exciting young players out there. These guys are seasoned. They were winning before James Harden came into the fold. So it's incumbent upon the Sixers, Rivers, for them to get their act together about what they really want from James Harden and what they're trying to execute, regardless of how Harden is going to be there and what capacity is going to be there. Because at the end of the day, this team only goes where Joel Embiid goes, right? Sure. And that should be the focus. That it should be the focus that the team collectively looks better offensively, rather than saying we need James Harden to bail us out, of every situation that goes on. And that to me is the big thing that really sticks out that I've seen in the first 3 games that they've played.
So, I mean, I think if people are watching or listening, they're going to say, well, kind of like, what are you talking about? Harden's averaging 9 assists a game, So I think, from a point guard standpoint, he's facilitating, but I think it's how he's facilitating that is really the issue here more than anything else. So that's where you don't want it to be the same James Harden, where it's like, okay, he dribble. Oh shit, I'm in trouble right now. Let me try to find somebody. Like,
exactly.
Pass the ball, relocate, maybe even get it back, then create again. But there's too much kind of heavy isolation, maybe like a pick and roll. He might throw a lob here and there. And sometimes you're getting on the break, but Philadelphia is one of the lowest fast break teams in the NBA. And that's obviously Embiid is not a speedster, and neither is Harden. So I think, if you're listening and watching, I think it's not to just look at the raw numbers, because sure, nine assists a game is 9 assists a game. He's doing it. But I think it really is about, again, how is he moving the basketball? Is there a collective flow instead of it kind of going your turn, my turn, or Tyrese Maxey's like, all right, well, when is James going to get out so I can now cook or try to initiate and handle the offense? I'm in Embiid as well too, but as a guy who can pass out of double teams and is going to get double teamed on a regular basis. So, are they going to allow him to get it on the post, ball fake, pivot, turn, read the defense, hit a guy in the corner or hit a cutter and do those types of things? Or is it going to be just kind of like waiting for Harden to initiate entirely? And I think that's where, this conversation has a lot of validity there from that aspect. Because even if you bring in Anthony Melton, to back up and spell Harden, he's more of a defensive type guy. He's not a play creator and facilitator. So they do kind of lack that outside of Harden himself. Maxey can do it kind of in a pinch. And then I think you're looking at Embiid as probably their next best playmaker outside of that. So a lot to figure out here in Philadelphia. They're in the bottom third in offensive rating and defensive rating here in the first week of the season. Again, it's the first week, so we're not trying to read too much into it.
But they played against playoff teams, and I would expect that if you're competitive, and unless teams decide to have the Ole defense going on, there's going to be some give or take there. So my expectation, like this, they have a tough schedule. Excuse me, no question. You know what I'm saying? So I expect them to struggle. What I wasn't expecting as far as the struggling aspect goes, Shaw, is this lost in space ability to not really play to the strengths of what each individual player brings to the table that makes the Philadelphia 76ers a quality basketball team. And I think even to your point, whether or not the plantar fasciitis is really hurting Joel Embiid, I'm just not seeing enough bully ball by Joel Embiid. I see a lot of fadeaway shots. I see him camping out over by the 3-point line. I don't see a lot of movement, in the paint from his part. And and this is the thing again too, Sean. We talk about this when we say, if you're Doc Rivers and you can clearly see that your guy is not right, you know what, man? Hold the damn guy. Like seriously. Like before he does harm to himself and does harm to your season. It's not just the player's season. It's also Doc Rivers' season. If anybody is not really paying attention to this, Doc Rivers is kind of, on a very lukewarm seat, so to speak, right? Because the window of opportunity for the Philadelphia 76ers to be relevant in the NBA is slowly but surely closing. And now, and look, me, Shaw, I keep my eye on other things in sports, right? Let's be realistic. Out there in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Eagles are an undefeated NFL football team. They love them football out there, probably a lot more than they love basketball. The Philadelphia Phillies are going to the World Series, an 87 win Major League Baseball team, right? A wild card team that everyone said had no business even getting to the damn postseason. They're playing in the World Series, right? So you can see right now, maybe this is a good thing if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, that all eyes are on Philly town for football and for baseball. And so you can kind of fly under the radar a little bit because you're not winning basketball games. But you don't want to be not winning basketball games and stinking up the joint. That you don't want to be doing that, because now Philly fans will definitely let you know. They got their eyes on everything. You know what I'm saying? They'll call out the Flyers. They'll call out the Sixers if you're stinking up the joint. And I'm just saying, if you're Doc Rivers, you got to take note of that, because you can't ill afford to let this team struggle the way it does, because some players are prideful to not execute the way you want them to execute simply because they're nursing an injury and they can't give you the max effort required for them to be the kind of basketball team that they expect to be.
Yeah, well, Embiid shooting 45% here to begin the year, so not indicative of like what he's capable of as an offensive talent. I think the bigger issue is what you said earlier. In some ways, in terms of the play creation, I look at this roster of 4 guys averaging double digits, but 3 of them are averaging 20. Then Tobias Harris at 14. The next guy, PJ Tucker, and Anthony Melton at 4.7 points per game. And us, we're not just all about offense here, but I think that's part of the issue, that they're so top heavy, despite all the, this is like the Philadelphia Rockets here. You bring back Daniel House and Tucker and all these other guys. We're just not seeing the impact just yet here. Again, early, we understand that. But I think you need to see some bench guys now get into at least an 8 or 9 point per game range. Yeah, I mean, not 4.7, where you have this drastic drop off, from those top four guys in your starting lineup. We know Tucker's not going to be a big, heavy scorer anyway, but somebody off that bench should be, being able to give you like close to 9 to 12 a game. And we just haven't seen that thus far in the early part of the season.
Out of curiosity, Shaw, how are they rebounding the basketball?
Rebounding, I can check for you real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of curious about like how this team is.
Well, yeah, total rebounding, they're 30th. Offensive and defensive rebounding, 27th and
Right. So,
24th,
so I'm
respectively.
sorry. Let me readjust them binoculars again, because I know I wasn't seeing double when I saw. Like they just again because they're a team, and it's ironic to me because they're not the worst shooting basketball team, right? Like by any
Yeah.
stretch of the imagination, they make shots, but again, they hurt themselves by not collapsing, limiting the other team's opportunities from getting second chance scores, and they'll give themselves enough opportunity to score the basketball. And one other thing I think that really sticks out to me too when I think about this Philadelphia 76ers team, Shaw, is the team's propensity to only rely on Joel Embiid or James Harden to get to the free throw line. I don't understand that, right? If you're Tobias Harris and you're Maxey, you guys should be getting an equal amount of opportunities to get to that basket. Okay, you really should. That means that there's a lack of aggressiveness in their ability to get to the free throw line. I think a lot more because of the reliance on two guys who arguably will always get those calls. You know what I'm saying? If the ball is in their hands, which to your point we were just talking about earlier, Shaw, lends to the usage about why everyone else is lost in space and the ball only sticks to those two dudes.
Yeah. Max is getting 5 threes a game, so he's third on the team. So that's not terrible, I guess. But I think Tobias really just not even one free throw attempt a game at this stage of the season.
You know what I'm saying? It's like the fraction of a fraction.
Yeah, yeah. 0.7 free throw attempts. Again, it's early. It's super early, but I think it needs to be a little bit more indicative about their overall physicality and aggressiveness, and just trying to find other ways where they're not just camping out, basically waiting for Harden to kick out to them. Can they create offense in other ways? Can you involve Harris and Joel in even some pick and roll situations, or Harris and Maxey in some PNR as well too? I think there's some different situations that Phil Jackson, Doc Rivers will be able to eventually utilize, and I think not be so ball dominant with Harden. But again, it's early season. But I'm concerned about Philadelphia here in its totality. But I think it should be okay. By the time we have if they're like 0-6 by next week, then let's hit the panic button fully.
Oh, if they hit 0-6 and we have to revisit this conversation, Shaw, we're getting the full sound effect mode. I'm gonna get the red ambulance lights. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna make this a show. You know what I'm saying? And we're gonna make this a show. Absolutely. Faux show. We're gonna make this a show. Faux show. You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Final thoughts, Shaw, on what's really been collectively a very an awesome display of NBA basketball and great conversation to be had, because I think our listeners too, if you're looking at both of these teams and their respective conferences and what they've had to do so far, who they've played against, you would probably take it all day, every day. If you're a Sixers fan, it's like, listen, I can live with the fact that they took two tough losses, but that one loss, to your point, against San Antonio, just, what the hell was that kind of, type of L to take? But if you're the Lakers, man, it's just so much more deep rooted and mired in all of this unnecessary drama. If there is an 0-3, you know what I'm saying, they were playing like how the Sixers were playing, we wouldn't be having this conversation about the Lakers either.
Yeah, I mean, but to lose to Golden State on a ring night it's not the end of the world. You lost to your rival now, the Clippers. I think they've lost to them, I don't know, something ridiculous like 12 straight times or 10 straight. I was like, what is it? I didn't realize the Clippers had that level of success against the Lakers here in the last few years.
Yeah.
The Blazers lost, it just doesn't look good. Then you got the Nuggets, you got the Timberwolves by the time we do this, the Nuggets again, the Pelicans. It could get ugly. It could get ugly before you think like there's a team that, all right, they really should be, and that's the Utah Jazz. And as we said earlier, the Jazz are playing good basketball. So the Lakers are going to have to figure it out one way or another here, get their chops together, continue to at least playing, at least trying to get an effort defensively. But if they don't get some shooting, it's going to be a very, very long season.
I cannot wait for us to have one of our takes where, where we should be in our buy or sell mode. You know what I'm saying? Buy or sell on some of these teams, man. Like, I cannot wait for us to get to that point of the season where we kind of start honing in on some of this stuff. We buying in the Lakers shooting, or we selling on that, like short sell that.
You know
what I'm saying?
Chime in, and there's a poll on Twitter right now on the Baseline Twitter account. We have out there, where will the Lakers 3-point shooting finish? Will it finish sub 30, which is terrible, or somewhere between 31 to 33, 33 to 35, or somewhere where they turn this completely around and at least become better than league average at over 35%. So
I pray that they improve, because I just can't take the facial expressions that Stephen A. Smith be dropping every single time he talks about like the Lakers not shooting the basketball. Or, I mean, have you seen some of these facial expressions? Like, I mean,
No, I'm not a big Stephen A. consumer these days, but
no, I'm just saying, like, you can't help but, you know what I'm saying, when you're watching some of the, you know, because you're a sports person,
Sure.
and, you know, but I'm just telling you, man, some of the facial expressions, you know, I can't be having that, man. Like, you know what I'm saying, I got to get through my day. I got to be able to sip my coffee. I don't want to have to turn the TV off, man. So
Exactly.
Lakers, please, you know what I'm saying, step it up, man. Step it up.
Tighten up.
Anyway, awesome show this week, man. And as always, man, we want to definitely hear from you. So be sure to get at us at NBA Baseline. For the Baseline, Cal Lee Warren Shaw. We appreciate you guys. You know we do.